Bro, hear this for a second. We're in the wildest stretch of the NFL calendar right now. The whole league's on freeze. Contracts are getting reworked. Rumors are blowing up on Twitter every 4 minutes. And Commanders fans are glued to the screen like we're waiting on test results. We know we passed, but we're still low-key nervous. That's what the start of NFL free agency feels like, fam. And this year, for the Washington Commanders, it hits different. It really feels like finally, this squad is hitting the open market with intent, with money, and with something to prove after a 2025 season that left a salty taste in the mouth despite all the talent we saw on the field. And look, this team is not rebuilding, it is building. Huge difference. When you rebuild, you wipe the past. When you build on what you already have, you're stacking layers on top of a foundation that already proved it can compete. The Commanders were just in the NFC Championship game a year ago. They got Jaden Daniels under center. They got Dan Quinn at head coach, who already showed that this is a coach who can take teams to the playoffs in different spots. And now they literally have $86 million in cap space to play with. 86 million people. That's not just a budget. That is a relative blank check in this league. But before we talk about what is coming in, we have to talk about what is going out. Because there is one move a lot of us have been waiting on for months, arguing about for weeks, and now it is finally turning official. A move that hurts because it represents an expensive mistake, but at the same time cracks open a massive door for this franchise's future. So grab your coffee, your water, whatever you've got within reach, because this one's good. Let's roll. News 1, Commanders cut Marshon Lattimore. Okay, let's just keep it 100 from the start, because that is how we do things here. The Marshon Lattimore trade was a mistake, period. There is no sugarcoating it, no clean positive spin in hindsight. No real way to say, well, it made sense at the time and sound convincing. Because truth is, even back then in October of 2024, when the Commanders sent picks to the Saints to bring in a big-name corner, there were voices in the fan base saying, hold up a second, are you sure about this? And listen, the logic, on paper, I get it. The team had just come out blazing with Jaden Daniels. The season had that something special vibe. And the defense needed help on the back end. Lattimore is a name. Lattimore was a multi-time Pro Bowler. At one point, this was one of the best corners in the entire NFL. So when Peters and company pulled the trigger, you could build an argument. Expensive, yeah, risky, for sure. But there was an argument there. Here's the problem, though, fam. Marshon Lattimore showed up in Washington broken. Not metaphorically. Physically, the injury issues were already stacking up in New Orleans, and what was supposed to be an elite cornerback turned into a player we saw in just 11 games with this team. 11. And in those 11, the performance was, let's be blunt, subpar, way below what you expect from somebody you just tossed multiple draft picks for. And then the ACL, a torn ACL that basically nuked any shot at even a decent third act to this story. Now, per Adam Schefter from ESPN, the Commanders have informed Lattimore they plan to release this player before the new league year starts. And bro, this was so expected, it is almost funny how long it took to actually happen. Not because it is some shocking move, but because everybody in this fan base saw it coming the moment the season ended. It has been the elephant in the room all offseason. When are they cutting Lattimore? When are they making that move? When are they going to officially admit this did not work? The answer, right now. And it has got a very practical explanation. Lattimore had a roster bonus of $2 million that was going to kick in on March 15th. If they kept this contract on the books past that date, the cost would shoot up with basically zero competitive upside. So the move has to happen before March 15th. The complication was the injury settlement. Because once a player goes down hurt, there are negotiations around what part of the guaranteed money still hits. That slowed everything down, but apparently that part is finally getting wrapped up. Now let's talk numbers, because the numbers are what really drive this whole story. By cutting Lattimore, the Commanders free up $18.5 million in cap space. 18.5 million. To put that in perspective, that is more than the average yearly salary of most corners in the NFL. That is real money, fam. Add that to what they already had banked, and Washington is heading into this offseason with roughly $86 million available. putting this team third in the entire league in cap space. Only the Jets and Titans have more. The Jets, who always have cap and never seem to know what to do with it, and the Titans, who are basically in full tear-it-down rebuild mode. So among the teams that are actually trying to compete in 2026, the Commanders probably have more wiggle room than almost anybody. But here is the part that matters more to me than the raw numbers. Because the numbers are easy. Cap space is just a resource. What matters is what you do with that resource. And Adam Peters is now carrying something interesting on the shoulders here. The pressure to prove that this general manager can turn that cap space into something real on the field. Because last year, the offseason was conservative, very conservative, too conservative for a lot of folks in this fan base, and that showed up in 2025 when certain needs just stayed needs. Edge, rush, safety, depth in the secondary. This time around, Peters cannot blame the budget. The money is there. The question is whether this front office has the eye to spend it the right way. And then there is the most painful part of the entire Lattimore conversation. What this experiment cost in draft capital, because it was not just money, fam. It was a third rounder, a fourth rounder, a sixth rounder, 3 draft picks that are just gone, that never turned into players, that never added depth to this roster in the modern NFL, where the draft is absolutely the most efficient way to build young, cheap talent. Burning those picks for 11 mediocre games and a torn ACL is a wound that still stings. It still hurts, and Adam Peters, who rightfully has a good rep as a roster builder, is going to wear that stain for a while. So what happens with Lattimore now? Bro, this player is 30 years old, coming off back-to-back seasons with serious injuries and hitting the open market without the hype that was around a few years ago. The most realistic outcome is a prove-it deal, a 1-year contract where the goal is to show this corner is still that elite version, regain value, and relaunch the career. Some team out there will roll the dice because a truly healthy Marshon Lattimore still has top-tier corner upside, but nobody's paying like this is 2021. That is just the reality of football. Time does not wait for anybody, and injuries have long memories. What is really interesting looking forward is how they fix the cornerback room now. Okay, Lattimore is gone, cool, but the secondary still has legit question marks. Mike Sainristil, who in 2024 looked like a player on the rise, had a 2025 that was a noticeable step back. Trey Amos, the rookie, who was balling out until the fibula fracture, heads into 2026, still coming back from that. So you have 2 corners with big unknowns, and Durante Jones's defense demands corners who get coverage, who have a high football IQ, who can operate in a complex system. The report mentions Jalen Watson, Eric Stokes, and Cordale Flott as potential free agent targets. Those are not names that are going to make your Twitter feed melt down. But they are young players with good scheme fit that Peters can probably sign without blowing the cap. And that makes sense. Sometimes the right answer is not the biggest name on the board. Sometimes it is the best fit for the system. Okay, bro. But hold up, because while everybody was locked in on Lattimore and the cap space, the Commanders quietly pulled off another move that says a lot about how this front office wants to build the offense for 2026. And this is one of those signings casual fans overlook, but the folks who really understand ball are going to love. News 2, Allegretti signs 2-year extension. Look, not everything in the offseason is drama. Not everything is some painful release or a trade gone sideways. Sometimes the offseason is about continuity, about keeping what works, about being smart with the small moves before you chase the big fish. And that is exactly what this new 2-year extension for Nick Allegretti represents. Nick Allegretti, if you are a casual fan, maybe that name does not mean much. If you are somebody who watches the trenches, understands offensive line play, appreciates how insanely hard it is to protect a quarterback in the modern NFL, then you know exactly who this player is and why this matters. Allegretti is a guard, a trench dog, and comes out of one of the best offensive line systems of the past 10 years, the Kansas City Chiefs. 5 seasons there, 3 Super Bowl rings, and a defining toughness story in the 2023 Super Bowl. Allegretti played with a torn UCL, ulnar collateral ligament ripped, and this player kept going because Joe Thuney was out, and the team needed somebody who would just gut it out. You do not see that every day, fam. That is character. That is commitment. And when Washington went to get this player last year, that is exactly the type of mentality they were hunting. And the reason Allegretti left Kansas City is honestly one of the more human parts of this whole thing. In Kansas City, this player was the backup, the one who comes in when somebody goes down, and that brought home 3 rings, which is no small thing, bro. 3 Super Bowls. A lot of players go their whole careers and never sniff one. But Allegretti wanted to start, wanted to be the guy, wanted a full season of 16, 17 weeks as the right or left guard holding it down. So when the Washington opportunity showed up, Allegretti and spouse made the call. We are out. We're chasing that dream, and they got it. In 2024, Allegretti started every single one of the 17 regular season games for Washington. 17 full season as a starter, and the team made the NFC Championship game. That is stamped forever. This was part of the line that protected Jaden Daniels during that historic rookie season. Part of an offense that moved the sticks, opened running lanes, and took over on the ground when it needed to. Allegretti was a real piece of something that clearly worked. 2025 was a different story. This player suited up in 16 games, but only started 4, so the role shifted back more toward a swing backup spot. But here's the key detail for the future. In the last 2 games of the 2025 regular season, Allegretti started at center. Center, not guard. That matters because Washington now has to sort out the center position after releasing Tyler Biadasz. And if Allegretti can handle that spot in an emergency, if this is the player who can slide inside when the starter goes down, that boosts the value on this roster in a way that does not show up in the headline number on the contract. The extension covers 2 years, locking in this season and adding 1 more on top. Exact numbers have not hit yet, but reports say the restructure drops the cap hit for 2026, giving the front office extra space to maneuver in this exact offseason. That is what I like about this move. It is not some wild deal that locks up future flexibility. It is a smart, efficient contract that keeps a valuable vet without jamming up the cap. Peters doing Peters things, working quietly in the background. And speaking of Allegretti, there is another move tied to this one, the 2-year re-signing of Andrew Wiley. Wiley and Allegretti came off the same tree, ex-Chiefs, vets who already know each other, speak the same offensive line language. That matters more than people think, fam. Chemistry on an offensive line is not just physical, it is communication. It is the calls at the line before the snap. It is the protection checks when the defense spins the look late. When you have 2 linemen who have played together for years, who know each other's habits, who anticipate what the other is going to do, that is a kind of value that never shows up on a stat sheet, but absolutely shows up in how clean the pocket is. There's something I always say about offensive lines. The sign of a good OL is that you do not notice it when everything is going right. If you are not seeing it, if Jaden Daniels is not constantly running for dear life, if the running back always has a clean crease, if the pocket stays firm, that is the trenches doing the job. And the fact that Peters is investing in keeping these guys before chasing any giant free agency splash tells me this front office understands the foundation. That this group does not want to build on sand, that the priority is making sure Jaden has time to cook before loading more weapons around this quarterback. And yeah, I get that some fans just want a big name. They want the elite tackle, the Pro Bowl guard, that one move that makes Twitter catch fire, and that could still happen. The cap space is there for that, but first you lock in what you already know works. First, you keep the continuity. That is the right call. That is the smart move. And that is exactly what this team is doing. There is also the center issue. Tyler Biadasz is no longer on the roster. And even though Allegretti showed this player can play center in a pinch, the front office probably wants a more permanent answer at that spot. The original report floated Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens, though this is probably going to be too pricey for what Peters wants to shell out, but there are other names out there in free agency and in the draft who could solve that need. The one thing that is obvious is the intention. Build a cohesive, smart, physically nasty offensive line to protect the franchise quarterback. Okay, fam, this team just cleared the biggest chunk of cap space we have seen in years, already locked in some continuity up front. And now the million-dollar question is, what do they do with all that money? Because $86 million does not spend itself, and the list of needs on this roster is very real. So let's talk about it. Because whatever they decide over these next 2 weeks is going to decide whether 2026 is another almost year or the year the Commanders finally take that real leap. News 3. What do you do with $86 million? The future of Commanders cap space. So this is where we are. This is the moment Commanders fans have been imagining for months. The general manager is standing there holding a fat checkbook, staring at a roster with very real holes. $86 million in space, third in the NFL, right behind the Jets, who always seem to find a way to fumble the bag, and the Titans, who are sitting in year 0 of a full build. Among the teams that actually expect to win in 2026, Washington has probably the most enviable cap situation in the league, and bro, that is new. That is not something we were used to saying about this franchise. For years, the Commanders lived with a tight cap, weighed down by old, badly structured contracts, dragging on every new decision. It was like trying to build a rocket while still paying off credit card debt. But the Peters era has quietly cleaned that mess up, step by step, with patience. And now this team walks into this offseason with real space, real room, and the ability to be true players in free agency. The question is how they spend it. And this is where I go into full roster builder mode, because this is not just vibes. This is strategy. This is real team building. First up, edge rush. This is the biggest and clearest need on the roster. In Durrani Jones's scheme, you need juice off the edge. You need players who can bend the corner, win one-on-one, and affect the quarterback without the scheme having to hide their flaws. And honestly, Washington does not have that dude right now. The report mentions Devin Lloyd as a possible target, who is more of an inside backer than a pure edge, which tells me the front office is looking at multiple roles. But edge is where I want to see the splash, a young, disruptive pass rusher who fits with what is already in that defensive front. Trey Hendrickson is the biggest name on the market, the Cincinnati dog, looking for a massive new deal, and the report basically says Peters does not plan to join that bidding war. That tracks. Hendrickson is going to cost a lot. And in a market where 2 or 3 teams with serious cap space are all locked in on the same guy, those prices get stupid real fast. Peters is not really that bidding war type. This is the type of general manager who hunts value before everybody else catches on. Then we circle back to the cornerback room, which we already touched on with Lattimore out, Sainristil still coming off a down year, and Amos still rehabbing a broken leg. Help is absolutely needed, and the targets being floated, Jalen Watson from the Chiefs, Eric Stokes, Cordale Flott, are potential guys who will not break the bank. Very on brand for Peters, value over star power. Some folks will want the marquee corner, the one getting those A-plus free agency grades. But if the scheme fit is right and the traits are there, the who is that again signing can end up giving you more than the fading big-name vet. Next up, interior offensive line, especially center. We already covered that Biadasz is out. And even though Allegretti can cover center in emergency mode, they need something more solid long-term. Linderbaum out of Baltimore is the buzziest name, but again, the price tag is probably above what this front office wants to drop. The market will settle that if it comes down into a reasonable range. Maybe there is a conversation. If not, there are other routes, including the draft in April, which has some legit center talent. And speaking of the draft, that angle cannot be ignored. Peters still has picks. Even with what was lost in the Lattimore deal, the team has its first rounder. It has its own selections. In a draft that looks strong in exactly the spots Washington needs help, defensive front. Secondary on what they do in the first 3 rounds could matter just as much as how they spend in free agency. What I like about where this team sits right now is that there are real options. Nobody is boxed into one move. There is no, we have to sign this one guy because there is no plan B. They can be picky. They can sit back for the first mad rush of free agency, watch the market settle, and then land the right pieces. That patience combined with that much financial firepower is a real advantage. That said, the fan base expectations are absolutely legit because last year the story was that Peters stayed way too quiet in free agency. That this front office banked too hard on young players and internal development when certain spots flat out needed proven vets. That conservative approach showed up in some rough patches during the 2025 season. So yeah, there is real pressure to show that this offseason the Commanders are going to be active, that they are going to be in the mix, that they are going to take calculated swings with this cap space. And I think they will. I think Peters learned. I think Dan Quinn learned. And I think Jaden Daniels, who is already clearly one of the brightest stars in the league, deserves a roster that is built properly around this quarterback heading into what should be a legit Super Bowl push type of year. Type $86 million, fam. You have to make that count. No excuses, no budget talk this time. The board is clean and the money is sitting there. Now it is on Adam Peters to prove this general manager can be just as good building a contending roster with a huge cap surplus as this front office has been at cleaning up the mess from before. Bro, if you made it this far, you already know this is getting serious. We are in the most exciting stretch of the year for Commanders fans, and every single day is going to bring new headlines, new signings, new moves that are going to shape whether 2026 is the year for real, the year this team finally jumps from good to legit Lombardi contender. Lattimore is out. It did not work. Those lost picks hurt, but Peters is picking up the pieces, clearing the space, and now has the resources to build something better. Allegretti is staying, the line has continuity, and Jaden Daniels is going to have protection. And with $86 million in the pocket heading into free agency, the next few days are going to be absolute chaos. Do not step away from this channel because we are going to break down every move, every signing, every release, every rumor that touches the Washington Commanders. And you, fam, drop your comment below. Who do you want to see signed this week? What is the move that would blow the top off your excitement? Trey Hendrickson, even if it is expensive, a surprise corner, that interior lineman nobody's really talking about yet. Tell me down there. Hit like if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe if you have not already. And ring that bell because when this thing blows, and it is going to blow, you want to be the first to know. HTTR always.